They say chivalry is dead, that it got buried somewhere between feminism and Netflix. But what if it isn't? What if it's just been sleeping, waiting for a generation of men to wake it up? Waiting for fathers to stop making excuses and start building sons with backbone and grit? What if knighthood isn't just chainmail and castles and things long ago, but rather courage, conviction, a martial spirit, strength, faith in Christ? On today's episode, we saddle up with Austin Leupp, a husband, a father of 6, and a man training his sons not just to behave, but to battle. Forget the Disney version. We're talking medieval grit, biblical masculinity, and what it takes to raise men who reject passivity, embrace responsibility, and ride out to fight for King Jesus. So join us as we build, fight, protect, and lead. This is the Patriarchy.
The poor men of God have done with lesser.
These are the questions that all of us at one time or another
with lesser things. Give heart and mind, soul and strength and serve the King of Kings. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod. As brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God.
Welcome back to the Patriarchy Podcast. I am Pastor Joseph Spurgeon. It's good to be back with you today. I am excited about my next guest. He is a member of Sovereign King Church, where I am pastor. One of the things I like to do with this show is to highlight, men in my church and other young men who I believe are working hard to put into practice the things that we teach in this podcast and are working hard to raise up families, train their children, love their wives, and sometimes we'll have a unique perspective on that. And so I have invited Austin Leupp to come to the podcast. We're going to be talking about a fun topic today. We're going to talk about knights and chivalry and prowess and raising a modern day knight. And so welcome Austin Leupp to the Patriarchy.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. It's a pleasure to be here. So, yeah,
So
you want to dive into it?
Who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, so I am a 30-year-old man. I am married to a wonderful, godly woman it'll actually be 10 years this year. We have 6 children, ranging from 8 to infant. And we've got 3 boys, 3 girls. And so, going through the ins and outs of raising daughters and sons is quite the feat. But if anyone's ever seen the movie Fury with Brad Pitt, it's the World War II tank movie. Well, one of the phrases there is best job I ever had. Best job I ever had. And so it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, so I am a welder and a fabricator for a company. We work primarily with like rock quarries and mines and stuff like that. But I have a coffee roasting business called Shoots and Arrows Coffee Company. And that's been growing and building the past year or so. And that's been a lot of fun too. I've been roasting for probably about 5 to 6 years. Good. Yeah. My pastor kind of likes my coffee. So it's kind of,
I didn't used to like coffee. I used to call it dirty bean water.
Yeah.
And now I do. I guess about a year ago, started liking it.
That's right. I remember you started to talk about it. I'm like, hey, I've got some coffee for you. You're like, hey, I'll try it. Yeah.
Hey, maybe it was you, dude. Maybe you're the one that got me drinking it, but I like it now. So
maybe.
And then you also have a podcast, right? So
yes.
What's it called?
So it's Rooted in Logos podcast. Been doing it for probably about 3 years now. Have over, I think, like 110 episode log, and primarily we dive into scripture. We talk about topics of today going on in society, things like that. Kind of been stepping away from it probably for the past little while, just with life It's been crazy. I'm recording in a house right now that I am in the middle of completely hauling over. So this is some of the last drywall I have in the house. So this is our frame. Otherwise, it would be looking a little ratty. So a lot of work, a lot of family stuff going on. We just had our sixth baby about 8-9 weeks ago, so we're going through that process as well. But it's been good.
So yeah, you're redoing the house. You care to tell us where you're living at or what you're living in?
Yeah, so we are currently in a fifth wheel parked on our property behind our house right now, and just doing the best we can with 6 kids and my wife and I. It's been good with the kids so close in age, being able to spend that time together in such a close-knit area, but then being able to be on the property to spend the time that I need in the house, redoing everything, walls. We're actually going to be putting the brand new roof on in the next week or so. So yeah, lot of stuff happening.
Well, you're like camping every day. You're like camping out every day. So
No, that's not camping. That's not camping. I mean, technically, if you want to say it, sure. I consider camping with a tent.
That's what people do. Yeah,
that's true. That's what a lot of people do. Yeah.
So you're a young father with a growing family. How has fatherhood shaped your understanding of masculinity?
In many ways, for sure. I would say half and half with being married and then having children. Being married and then realizing there is this woman, which God has given me, and everything Scripture says, love your wife like Christ loves the church. And it's like, okay, how did he do that? Well, he died for her. It's like, oh, okay. And then taking that role on, but then you start having children. We had our first daughter, Elora, and we were in the hospital on our first year anniversary with her. So being married a year, then right into fatherhood, and then one after the other. And it's been so good. God has blessed us so much to where with daughters and with sons being completely different animals there, as you would know, rolling into the knighthood aspect is for my sons. It is. But
yeah, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
It's yeah, one of the things I like about you is you're a fun guy to be around. We came to your house, we did like this you did a Hobbit party, and you had your whole yard and stuff fit up. And so you talked to me about like, what did you want to talk about on this podcast? And you're like, I want to talk about knights and chivalry. So what drew you to that? Like you're pretty much into that quite a bit. What drew you into knighthood?
So everything to do with knights, I have been enthralled with it since I can remember. Growing up with tales, my dad reading out loud to me and my siblings about, King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, reading stories growing up about these knights throughout history, reading firsthand accounts. It captivated me. And growing up with this mentality of chivalry, we'll get into it later, but what is a saying that a lot of people say? So like you go out into the world and a man opens the door for a woman, right? And she walks through the door. And it could be muttered underneath someone's breath or out loud saying, hey, look, chivalry isn't dead. And yes, that is true. Yes. But looking at things like that, like opening the door for a woman, is good. It's honorable. It's also I'm not going to call it a slight, but it's more of a major degradement of what chivalry actually is. Opening the door for a woman would actually be the Victorian era, right? So the Victorian age, looking at knighthood from bygones past, your 10th century to your 13th century, true knighthood, true chivalry. And the Victorian age being your 1800s and so on, of trying to revitalize some of that, but looking at it from an egalitarian way and pushing their men to do this more egalitarian chivalry in their mindset. And so true chivalry, true knighthood from true knights back in the 10th to 13th century, they would look at that and be like, That's less than 0.01% of what we're living our life for. And so that's what really dove me into the research, doing the reading, doing the work on history and what these guys actually did, what they actually believed, what they actually took to heart. And again, it enthralled me. I loved it. I could keep.
Is a knight? No, it sounds like you can. I'm going to let you. But what does a knight? What is a knight? Tell us. I mean, we've got all the Hollywood pictures of knights. You know, I've got on my computer screens here a bunch of Templar knights fighting a dragon as my background. So I actually kind of love the imagery myself. Tell us what were knights? Where did they come from? Just give us a little bit of background on that.
Yeah. So, okay, let's just look at the word chivalry. Chivalry, the English word chivalry, comes from the French chevalier, or even originally the Latin word, like, oh, how do I say it? It's like Salibian. I have it written down to help me say it. I don't read or write Latin very well. So it's
You can't be a knight if you don't know Latin.
I know, right? I got to find some classes. So Sibelius, which just means horseman. So chivalry, the general sense of you're able to look out on the battlefield, and here comes the chivalry or the chevalier, and they are horsemen, mounted men on horses. And so looking back at this time where knighthood really, really kicked off during your late 9th centuries to your 10th century, looking at the orders like the Plantagenets from England, from your Henry II to Henry III, and so on and so forth, to your orders in France. And it really came from France. Because during this time, England they weren't known as the English. Everyone there spoke French. During this time, Normandy was part of England. Again, not England at the point, just for reference. So most of this knighthood, this aristocracy of this warrior class was coming from France. And it was spreading out into the world to Germany, to Italy, to Brittany, so on and so forth. And it started with these tournaments. The joust, two men on horses galloping at each other full speed with lances, and who could knock each other off the horse. And from there, it would move on to the melee, where in the earlier 10th century, it would just be a mass group on either side, like two teams of mounted men on horseback, and they would ride into each other, beat the crap out of each other, and then the point would be you take prisoners. You would take a knight off his horse, and you would take all of his stuff. You would take him back to your camp, and then at the end of the day, they would basically pay to get out of technical jail. And so what they would do is like, all right, I'll pay you, 500 livres, the French currency at the time. And the knight that captured him, they would be like, I'll tell you what, 500 livres, and you got to give me your horse. And they're like, and so they'd go back and forth. But eventually they would have to pay something to get out so that they could get back to the melee the next day. And this is how a lot of the knights up and coming, they would be able to get into the circuit. They would be able to earn the money that they need to keep going through the circuit. And it would just go around all of France. It would go through Normandy to different places, kind of like the circus or kind of like tournaments, really. And so that's how the knights began. And the reasoning for it, the reasoning was you have this group of men, right, that are bent, as men are, we're bent to violence. We are bent to doing hard physical things. And what captivates a man more than strapping on armor and going to go beat the crap out of some other guys? So it drew in this noble aristocracy, the men who could actually afford to do it. Your peasants and your serfs, they couldn't. They'd stay out in the field with what they were doing. But anybody in a higher class that was able to afford such things, that's a lot of what they did.
So this was a thing really for the sons of the king and really the second-born sons. A lot of times They were the ones that were involved in this, and those kind of royalty, because they wouldn't have the throne, but they also didn't have a lot of day labor to do, being royalty. So they needed something to keep their attention. And young men with a lot of free time do reckless things and violent things. And so this was an idea, I guess, to shape that and mold that into at least something controlled.
Yes. So I'm trying to change everyone who's listening's perspective of chivalry and knighthood as an ideal. Reading in the firsthand accounts of a lot of these guys, a really good firsthand account it's called A Knight's Own Book on Chivalry by the knight Geoffrey de Charny. He was a 14th century knight, and he was charged by the King of France, John II, to write a book of chivalry, to kind of bring back the chivalric placement. The reason being is, so we fast forward a little bit to the Victorian era, and they're trying to do the same with an egalitarian mindset, and they are placing chivalry as a set of ideals. Whereas in the mind of a knight, if you would say that to them, they're like, what are you talking about? A set of ideals? No. In the mind of a knight, it would be as if, the way I would put it is, okay, faith without works is dead, correct? A knight would say, knighthood without chivalry is dead. And they coincide together. It's chivalry is not just an idea or a set of ideals. It's the physical application of knighthood. That is chivalry. That is your chivalric order, leading into things like prowess, sheer prowess. And in the sense that the knights of those days would figure it. Prowess being this, Geoffrey de Charny puts it, the man who does more is worth more. So the more skill you add to yourself, the more prowess you get, to where you go and do your jousts, then you move on to your tournaments, and you do those things. But here comes this knight who's coming from war, doing actual warfare, which encompasses everything that knight is doing at the tournament. De Charny would say that man is worth more honor because he has done more in the virtue of a true knight. And so the man who is winning all the tournaments, he's in first place, he's doing great, he would take the knee and basically say, what I am doing is far less than what this man is doing. So sheer prowess. And again, chivalry as not just a set of ideals, but the actual action in which knighthood would take place. And just the embodiment of true Christian life. I mean, what we would say is all of Christ for all of life, right? And so these men, they would take it just that step further. Reading through de Charny's book, it is Christ imbued in everything. If you're not doing it for the glory of God, there is no point. Like, there is no point to your chivalry. There is no point to your prowess. There is no point to these tournaments except for your own gain. And he's like, that's dishonorable. That's not worth your time.
Yeah. So what do you think is good about chivalry and what's been lost over time?
So the good aspect of chivalry, which I believe encompasses a lot, especially looking at our boys, giving them this avenue to compete, giving them this avenue to really flourish and become men. A lot of your modern look at knighthood, your modern movies. There's a movie called, it had Orlando Bloom in it. What was it? It was Kingdom of Heaven. Kingdom of Heaven with Orlando Bloom. I enjoy the movie. It's a great movie. Not historically accurate whatsoever, but it's a good movie. And so they give this portrayal of knights, and very little of these knights in the movies have any relationship with God. And it's just by name. I'm a knight, yeah, God, whatever. They kneel down to take their oath of knighthood, and they swear to the Lord, and that's about it. And then you would know any site of Templars they're evil men. They don't actually believe in God. They're just there for killing. And it's like, well, that's not historically accurate either. So it paints and it tarnishes this bad picture of knighthood and even the Templar order as well.
Men, it's time to reclaim what was lost. The kind of fellowship, tradition, and meaningful conversation that stems from the simple pleasure of a fine cigar. At Patriarch Cigars, we craft premium cigars with the same convictions that build strong families and lasting legacies, which is why we are proud to partner with the Patriarchy Podcast. As a thoroughly and unapologetically Christian company, this is not about trends. It's about building something to the glory of Christ. It's about men gathering with purpose, sharpening one another, and leading well. Every cigar is a reminder of who we are called to be. Visit patriarchcigars.com. Light one up, smoke with purpose, and lead your families, all to the glory of God.
And so trying to get back to what it truly is, to set up our sons in this victorious manner, is really important. So what has been lost is, and really, it's a dishonoring of our fathers in the faith, because many of them were devout men of faith. They loved the Lord, and everything that they did was for Christ. Now, a lot of them in the Catholic faith, it was for Mother Mary as well. But again, this was before the Reformation. So that was the faith. And firmly believing a lot of these men were our forefathers in the faith, it's a dishonoring on their names and dishonoring on their honor as well.
You know, this was a time before the Protestant Reformation. That doesn't necessarily excuse their idol worship and idolatry. And I think if you look at something like the Crusades, it is a mixed bag of motivations, and it is wrapped up with indulgences and things that we would rightly oppose. But one of the principles I use when thinking about the Crusades and about this time period is I think of how David honored Saul after Saul died. David writes a song about Saul. Now, Saul's been chasing David. He's been disobedient to God. He saw a witch. I think there are some little bit of clues in the text that Saul may still be in heaven. I pray he is. My heart breaks over him in the book. But David, when he finds out about Saul's death, laments. He puts to death the guy who bragged about it. And then he writes a song in which there's really no mention of any of Saul's sin. Rather, it's a highlighting of Saul's strength, which his strength was his military prowess and his political prowess to benefit the people of God. And so he honored that. And so my principle then, when I look at the Crusades and I look at knights like you're talking, is we definitely acknowledge the idol worship, the indulgences, and I don't want to go back to that. I don't think that is good. The gospel is primary. When you screw with that, it's bad. And yet these people are part of the visible church. And as you said, some of them were living to try to glorify God as best they knew at that time.
Yeah.
And so I think we can acknowledge the bad while honoring our forefathers in the faith as our fathers before us, at least their military prowess, their hard work, their willingness to sacrifice. One of the things I think about the Crusades is that while the wrong motive of going to think that you can redeem your soul by fighting is wrong, they at least had a desire to redeem their soul. I don't feel like even in our day, many people even have that.
No.
Like if you put a call out now for that, nobody would answer.
Nobody would show up. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So here's a question for you that I want to take it out of that century and bring it to today. You're a big fan, or you told me you were, of a book called Raising Modern Day Knights.
Yes, Robert
Tell
Lewis.
me a little bit about what's in that book. Kind of give me an overview of that book and how that's even shaped what we're talking about today.
Yeah. So great book. A lot of really good application. A guy by the name of Robert Lewis wrote it a while ago. It might have been the 80s, maybe before then. But it was trying to get back to this bygone age and raising godly men in a very physical way and giving them outlets to do these things. This look on ceremonies throughout this man's life. and culminating into your actual knighting ceremony, looking at historical accounts is a beautiful thing. So the point of this book is getting back to ceremony, and Mr. Lewis got together with several of his friends and said, we need to get together as a group of men and raise our sons together. And as they get to these different stages in life, we're going to have a ceremony, and depending on which ceremony that is, it's giving your young men a pinpoint, kind of like with Old Testament, the Jews, when it came to bar mitzvahs and bar mitzvahs, of saying, today you are a man. I am going to treat you as such. You are going to get more responsibilities and so on and so forth. So looking at the stages leading up to knighthood, you have 3 of them, including knighthood. It is your page stage, which is around the mark of, I would say, 6 to 8 years old of a young boy. At years 1 to 6 or 1 to 8, he's in the home with his mother, or in the castle with the ladies of the house. What he's doing during this time is he's learning what it takes to keep a castle, to keep a home. He's watching, and he's even partaking in helping with the cleaning, with the baking, making the sourdough, making the meals for the knights, the meni, as it would be called, an order or a group of men in the castle. And through that time, he's learning all those things. He's taking on responsibilities. Once he gets to that age, 6 to 8, he then becomes an esquire. He goes through that ceremony, and he then graduates out of the castle, out of being with the women, and he is put with knights. He is then an armor bearer to one of the knights. He learns how to polish armor, how to keep armor, how to mend armor, learning the importance of all this, making sure that the sword stays sharp and why, making sure he learns how you never put a sword that has blood on it back in the scabbard. It gets stuck, it rusts, it never comes back out. A lot of these different things. This is where he starts building up his prowess. He starts building up his retinue of things learned. So that once he gets to the age of about 21, that is when he starts to enter into knighthood. He has his knighthood ceremony, which lasts several days. Lots of joy, lots of feasting, lots of time in prayer, and he becomes a knight. And then he is introduced into the meni, or the order. So in the basic nutshell, this book lays out how Mr. Lewis and his friends raised their sons together, went through these different ceremonies, giving them this opportunity to do these things. And he even adds another one of marriage. The night before the boys would get married, they would all get together and they would have a ceremony then too. I forgot what it's called. It's like a ceremony of covenants or something like that. But yeah,
you're basically talking about rites of passages and milestones in a young man's life. There's another book I read I think it's called Milestones, and it makes this case for reclaiming these for fathers, I think even in the church, just the milestones in people's lives and honoring them. And it followed a very similar pattern. Well, you're still in the very early years of fatherhood.
Yeah.
But what are some of the ways that you are now incorporating the things we've been talking about? What are your ways you're trying to instill a strong biblical mindset in your sons?
Yes. So there are 4 principles that Mr. Lewis gives for men. 4 principles that men should have. Reject passivity, lead courageously, take on responsibility, and expect the great reward. And putting those into play with my sons and even my daughters to a point as well. But teaching, like right now, my oldest boy is 5. Man, all right, 3 boys, 5, almost 2, and then an infant. And my 2 boys right now, they're 152% boy. Like, I was never this much boy. It's just off the walls, bruising all the time, fighting all the time. And the 2-year-old can hold his own with the 5-year-old. It's glorious. It's awesome. It's cool to see. So right now, it's teaching self-control. It's teaching when you get angry what to do. One thing that I use with my oldest boy is not telling him that he is a knight. He is training to become a knight. But there is an inner battle within him. There's the dragon, and then there's the knight, and correlating it with the dragon is your sin, the sin of your flesh, what he wants versus what the knight is supposed to do. And it's the constant battle. I'm like, Alaric, which my oldest son is Alaric, he is going to be fighting this battle, telling him this, you're going to be fighting this battle for the rest of your life. This is a battle that Daddy fights every day of his life. Sometimes the dragon gets the upper hand, and I have to ask the Lord for forgiveness for that. And I have to beat him back, and I have to win the day for that with my own fleshly desires, as all men do. And so trying to put that into play, trying to put that into practice with him and getting those visuals, because the visuals are very helpful for young boys. And just the sense of he's fighting a dragon is very important. So yeah, trying to incorporate those things. And right now we're coming up here in the next probably 2 years where he's going to switch into the Esquire stage. And that will actually change certain things when it comes to schooling as well. We homeschool, doing more of a classical education, but he's under my wife. He's learning from my wife. He's going to switch and do more things under me. I will be taking more of the classes and more of those things, teaching him those things as well. Being able to have a job where he'll actually be able to come out with me 1, maybe 2 days a week and be able to do those things as well. But right now, he's in the stage with his mother of she is teaching him how to make sourdough bread, and he gets to help with that. And eventually he will be the one who is able to make it from scratch, bake it, and serve it. Now, a couple reasons for that. It's like, well, why would you make your boy do that? That's for his wife to do, right? It's like, yes, it is. It does 2 things. 1, it teaches this young boy coming into a man the value of what this is. And it's not just sourdough, it's the whole aspect of the home, right? It is teaching this young boy just the effort that it goes into doing this thing, of making sourdough from scratch, of making sure the dishes are kept up, making sure the laundry's kept up, so that he understands what it takes. And also the second thing is, as he begins searching for his future bride, searching for the woman that will be a crown upon his head, that he is not so easily distracted by certain girls. That this girl could come up to him and say, look, I baked a sourdough loaf for you. Here you go. He's able to look at it and say, wow, thank you. Like, I know what it takes to make that. But I can also make that. So it's like, you got to do a little bit more. Like, you got to show me that you're able to keep more of a home, so on and so forth. Not trying to make it impossible for the girls, but giving that for my boys, that again, they know what it takes, but they're not so easily distracted or won by the girl, and it gives him more of a chance to win the girl.
Well, these are pretty interesting ways of thinking about it. I appreciate that mindset. It really is the mindset I've tried to think about as well, in that while the boys are young, they are more under their mother's leading, but as they grow, I have to take on more and more. And maybe that's one of the reasons that I'm opposed to public schools, is that for most of the young man's life until he becomes an adult, he's now under women, right, the entire time.
Yep.
Because most school teachers are women. It's one of the things we started the Sovereign King Academy, wanted to make sure we have a man leading it and have things for the young men to be doing. And the same thing would be with your homeschool. So you've been thinking through this issue for quite a while.
Yeah.
And so knights trained in prowess, physical skill, courage, and discipline.
Mm-hmm.
How would you encourage other young men to pursue these things as well?
Yeah, so definitely taking Paul's instruction in Ephesians 6, raise your children up in the paideia nouthesia of the Lord, the discipline instruction or fear and instruction of the Lord. Taking that to heart, and say you have young children, as I do, where I am being very purposeful with even like curriculum. I sit down with my wife, we're looking at the curriculum that they have now, but I'm looking ahead for our daughters as they're getting older, and even our boys. And I'm picking the curriculum for as they get older. and I'm able to bring it to my wife and say, all right, I want you to be able to go through this with our children. And she's like, okay, let's do it, which has been awesome. 2, of mastering yourself, right? Trying to build up that prowess. That was something so important in knighthood, to where these knights would build this prowess, to where these younger knights would, as they're coming up, they're attracted to you, right? They walk into the hall of feasting, and everyone's there sharing their stories, that this is what happened. But then also what happens is these knights are sharing stories of other knights. There's an awesome story. There's a knight by the name of William Marshall. It was during the life of Henry II, all the way to King John's son, Henry III. He's known as the greatest knight, and he was the power behind 5 kings of England. And he lived to be the ripe old age of, I believe, 71, 72. Had 10 children with 1 woman. Awesome guy. But there's this story of the King of France at the time was in his hall feasting with all his retinue and all the nobles there. And there begins a muttering within the room. And the king notices it. And so someone comes up to the king and whispers in his ear. And noticeably, his face gets not sullen, but saddened. And it kind of gets quiet in the room, and he looks around next to him and says, have you heard what has happened? And the men there are like, yes, we have. They begin to speak about the knight William Marshall. And the king of France says that basically the greatest knight to have ever lived has passed on, and he has died, and he has gone to glory. And the reverence that they give this man is just amazing. And if anybody knows, during this time, France and England, or France and Britain, they are at war with each other, and they have been fighting and killing each other for a long time. So to have this knight in Britain being the power of these 5 kings in Britain, for the King of France to be able to say of this man, he is the greatest knight to have ever lived. That is what I shoot for, right? Not just for myself, but for my sons. And praying, Lord God, even let my sons surpass me. To be like an Abraham, raising a David. Like, Lord God, please let them surpass me in both chivalry and prowess and honor. And so, getting back to, you are mastering yourself. You have to master yourself. And this is in many aspects, looking at it from a physical, a mental, spiritual, emotional. Sidestepping, what I really love about Tolkien, about his writings and his development of his male characters, like Aragorn and Faramir and Éomer, Boromir, is these are these men that are stacked with prowess, true chivalry, and yet you have this imagery of, say, like in the movie The Fellowship of the Ring, when Boromir is dying, you have this scene where Aragorn is over Boromir, and they're both sharing this intimate moment, and he's not afraid to weep over his lost brother. And Boromir says, "You are my king." And we as men need to be able to keep our emotions in check. We cannot be tossed to and fro. We are not women. Paul himself in Scripture says, act like men, as in we all know what that means. But with that being said, we need to be able to have the calluses on our hands from wielding the sword all day, but be able to set that sword down and pick up our young daughter and love on her. That is incredibly important. Teaching that to your sons, that your sons are capable of extreme violence, and they are meant to be capable of extreme violence. That is ordained by God. That is a gift that the Lord has given men to deter evil, to combat evil. And as an older man teaching that to his sons, you got to do it first. And it's hard, especially if you were not raised that way. If you were raised with with an effeminate father or a lack of a father at all. It's hard. I'm not going to lie to you that it's not, but it's awesome. It really is. To then be able to teach that to your son and see it in him it's beautiful. So yeah, then comes into the actual physical thing. You can do jujitsu. You can do different styles of hand-to-hand combat, Krav Maga, Taekwondo, whatever it is. I do more of the Krav Maga and a little bit of jujitsu. But then being in the day and age that we are today, guns are cool. Pistols, rifles, whatever it may be, learning that yourself so that you can teach your sons that as well.
That you're still a young father in the trenches. You've been working this out. You've been applying this, but maybe what's a lesson that God's teaching you right now about this, or about anything really? What's a lesson you're learning right now as a dad?
Oh man, which ones? As a father and a husband, again, I'm still figuring some of this out that I didn't quite have growing up. Growing up in more of your complementarian home. So seeking out these men to do these things with my wife, learning how to live with her with understanding, as the Apostle Peter would say. Even after 10 years, man, I'm learning a lot. And as a father, again, with sons and daughters, it's very different. My oldest boy, it is those days where I get home and I get the report from my wife and says, your son has been a terror all day. And I'm like, all right, how many rods of reproof have you dealt? And she's like, I lost count. I'm like, all right, boy, get in here. And we go have our discussions, and it'll be days, long, hard days where it's like, man, I've dealt with this boy 20 times. I'm like, Lord, am I doing something wrong? And the lesson that I've learned over these 5 years, especially with my oldest boy, is no, stick to it. Stick to it. Don't let your feelings get in the way of maybe I'm missing something, which is true, that maybe there is, and trying to have men around me to where they can look at me and tell me that. But with disciplining of saying, no, keep on it. Do the long plodding work, and it will be rewarding in the end. And that's been a big.
Yeah, a whole lot of fatherhood, motherhood included, parenthood is recognizing you've got 18 years plus the rest of your life to instill into your children.
Yeah.
It doesn't, when they're out of your home, but it changes significantly. But it's an every day, being faithful every day, pushing every day. Even as we've talked, and it's important for a man to have a strategy like you do in your home, and you recognize as things go, you often change up strategies, you work through strategies, I think Mike Tyson was the guy that said everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yep, exactly.
And so the things that you're sharing with us, I want my listeners to think, how do I take this and apply it in my own ways and in my own family? How do I make these fit in my own family? It's going to look, it may look same, it may look different, but I think you can take away the principles of our sons need to be encouraged to something greater than what is often encouraged. They need to be encouraged to the glory of God, and that they are men. They're meant to build, they're meant to protect, they're meant to fight.
Yeah.
And they're meant to lead.
Yeah.
All right, brothers, we're not just talking cosplay. All right, it's not just castles and crests and stories by candlelight. No, it's sweat, it's discipline. It's the quiet daily grind of raising sons to fear the Lord, love the truth, and fight evil, with their hearts anchored in heaven and their boots planted firmly on the ground. If you listened today and thought, well, that sounds inspiring, good. But if all you do is imagine sword fights and medieval honor codes and princesses, you've missed the point. The point is this: your home is the battlefield, your dinner table is the round table, and your sons are watching every day to see if you're a man worth following. So train their hands to work, Train their mouths to speak truth. Train their hearts to love the king who rides on a white horse. And if you want to raise knights, start by being one. Reject passivity. Embrace responsibility. Master yourself. Love your wife. Lead your home. Believe in Jesus. This is the work of men, and this is the call of Christ. Build, fight, protect, and lead. This is the patriarchy. Now, if this episode fired you up, don't just nod along. Act. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Leave us a review. It helps us reach more men. And share this with a brother who's raising sons or needs a reminder of what real manhood looks like. And if you want more content like this, short clips, teaching, and real tools for training godly sons, follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook. You can go to thepatriarchypodcast.com. All the links are in the show notes. So until next time, stay sharp, stay faithful, keep building. This is the patriarchy.